Do you think ESPN has quietly removed the stick to sports mandate? Because like it was a big deal when Jimmy Pitaro first came on that he was kind of trying to get everything to go back to stick to sports, and then now here we are, 6 years later or whatever it is, and talking about the things that that are kind of dominating the conversation with led by Aaron Rodgers and the Pat McAfee show.
The whole disingenuousness of stick to sports is that it's never about the topic. It's always about how people feel about the topic, right? And so there is a huge sector of people who are anti-vax, as was exposed when we were really in the height and the thick of the pandemic. We're in the middle of a culture war in America in general, grievance culture especially, white conservative grievance culture even more specifically. And so there are certain opinions that people aren't going, that's not going to create the level of outrage that it did maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I'm sure if I said what I said about Donald Trump in today's ESPN culture, it would be different because people call Donald Trump a white supremacist like they saying his first name. That is not a new opinion. It's not unique. Okay.
Right.
And it is commonly said. So there's nothing, there would probably be no fanfare around it because so much has changed. But there are certain opinions, though, especially if those opinions put ESPN in the crosshairs of certain kind of viewers, I think those will probably always create a different level of internal reaction than other topics. Even so, I don't think they're going to have some stick to sports mandate. I think it's going to be a case by case basis, depending on how the general public feels about the non-sports issue that's being expressed and talked about.
Yeah, I think ESPN should absolutely let its talent veer away from any sort of stick to sports initiative when warranted, but there has to still be some level of consistency on the network. Like the audience has to know a little bit about what they're going to get when they tune there. And viewers tuning to ESPN the day after the national championship, days before the NFL playoffs, as coaches were actively getting fired, and you tune to ESPN and you're essentially presented with Alex Jones for an hour. It's not consistent, and who is it serving? Because it's not serving the football fans, and honestly, I don't even think it's serving the Pat McAfee show fans at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. That's a fair criticism because the people, at least I've just heard this from people who consider themselves to be like regular viewers of his
Yeah,
show, is that they're kind of a little bit turned off by it.
yeah,
And for people who are more casual observers, this is like fun theater. This is like, oh, look at this circus. Oh, look at this car accident. It's a little bit more for them. But you're right. You do owe a certain amount of um you owe the people who regularly consume your content something different, and that's a decision that Pat has to make. Is that, am I serving the audience that got me here
right.
by veering off or allowing my guests to veer off into these topics that they probably don't necessarily want to hear? But then the other argument can be made because he's firmly in sort of the anti mainstream media, mainstream sports media, bubble. Like there's a lot of people who are, fans of his who kind of love the fact that he's, while on their network, challenging the same network. They kind
Right.
of like that. And that feeds the perception that his show is like not for, your traditional sports fans. It's for people who think a little more outside the box, who like the rebellious nature of the show. There's an argument to be made that maybe he is serving them. But I would like to think the majority of people who tune in to see Aaron Rodgers or Pat McAfee want to probably hear about sports.